by what we call hyperplasia, which means that we're growing a lot of brand new cells. And then once you're born, similar to your nervous system, we have pretty much all the muscle cells that we're going to have. It's what we do with them. And then once we get into puberty, the way the muscular system grows is by what we call hypertrophy, which is just making the cells that you have bigger. So if you start lifting weights, or your child or your boyfriend or somebody starts lifting weights, what happens to them? They get bigger. Most people will get a little bit bigger. A lot of women, we don't get bigger, we just get a little bit more defined. And it's not because they're growing more muscles. Once you're born, you have all the muscle cells you have. It's just that the muscle cells you have now get bigger. So before we're born, it's all about getting more muscle cells, the hyperplasia. Once you're born, it's all about just, depending on what you're doing, just getting bigger muscle cells, and that's the hypertrophy. With the adipose system, what we need to focus and remember is that everybody needs a certain, adipose is fat, everybody needs a certain amount of fat. We need it for our hormones, for all of our body organs to function. We have to have a certain amount of fat. We use it for insulation, for protection. It protects our internal organs in the cavity. It surrounds the brain. It's protecting almost every single vital organ that we have. So we need a certain amount of it, and what we just have to be aware of is that from about 6 months until about 8 years, there will be a rapid growth of adipose tissue cells, and it's just then, what do we do with it? Are we allowing them to be active? They play when they come home after school. Are you allowing them to have recess? Are you doing some type of movement while you have them in the classroom so that they're able to control the in versus the out and make sure that we're expending enough energy so we're not accumulating too many adipose tissue cells? Does that make sense? Okay. Next is the endocrine system. And that's all this stuff in here. I'm not going to go into detail about that. We just know that it affects puberty and that we need certain of those organs in order for proper developmental growth to occur. If you want to learn more, you can come over to my site. We go into this in depth. It's just absolutely fascinating what occurs in the body. But what we just have to be mindful of as our K through 6 educators is, does it look like our kids developmentally are going through the right stages and phases as their body's growing? Do they look like they're getting enough nutrition? Do they look like their size is right and appropriate? Do they look like they're happy? Because it all is one component that makes up a happy, healthy child. The next thing I want to talk about is the nervous system. And this is a fun fact. There's a lot of great research coming out of Harvard right now, and this is what Dr. Tedder and Margaret Krause, the third grade teacher at Roberts Academy, she and I are doing a research study based off a lot of the new research that's just come out of Harvard. And we know for a fact that when we're born, we have all the brain cells that we're going to have. And you remember, parents probably told you, heard the saying, you know, be careful, don't party, because you're going to lose your brain cells. They also say, I don't know where they go, they also say that we only use about 10 to 18% of the brain cells that we have, which is, again, to me, fascinating. The human body just is amazing. What a miracle. Now, what we're finding out, we're beginning to find out, is yes, you start out with this many brain cells, but what we now know definitively with the research from Richard Brady out of Harvard is that we might not be able to grow, I'm going to go back one, we might not be able to grow this whole new nerve cell, but we can now grow these secondary dendrites. And did you know that your body lays down neural pathways, and a neural pathway translates to learning? Your body lays down neural pathway the same physically as it does cognitively. So as you're sitting here listening to me and learning, you're laying down possibly secondary dendrites, which means more and more signals can rush and flow, and you're going to have a quicker retrieval, quicker memory, quicker recall. Your body does not know the difference between a physical pathway build or a cognitive pathway build. So again, I keep going back to Roberts Academy because we're in the midst of a really cool study right now, but it impacts you greatly in the elementary classroom setting. Because if you can get your students up and moving, and you can create and build secondary dendrites, what do you think they're going to do with their math? They're going to learn it better. They're going to learn it faster. I wish someone got me up and moving a little bit during math. Not my best area. But if we can grow more of these, and we can have signals firing, 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 and your body does not know the difference between physical versus cognitive, why are you not moving your students? You have an amazing opportunity to grow secondary dendrites, which means your student has the capacity to learn tenfold. Why are you not moving them? It's my soapbox. It's something to take away, though, and that's, did that handout get around? It started over here.
We ran out.
The research summary? Okay. Now, when you look at that research summary, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm just going to go off and recall.
Do you have one?
We know the big thing for classroom teachers is when you look at this area, this is huge.
I've heard that before.
This is huge. And I learned this level or taxonomy or paradigm, whatever quandary is what I call it, when I was in my doctorate program. And you hear from the older versions of this, you learn 10% of what you read, 20% of what you hear. What I focus in on are the bottom three. We learn 70% of what we discuss, we learn 80% of what we personally experience, and we learn 95% of what we teach others. So in order for me to teach, typically, if you're peer teaching, what are you doing? Well, we're learning from each other, but I'm what?
Sharon.
I'm all about movement. What am I doing if I'm peer teaching?
Standing.
I'm standing. Now, I had you take how many steps earlier? 7. On that research sheet, again, the stuff that's coming out of Harvard, we can grow secondary dendrites. The brain does not know the difference between a cognitive versus a physical neural pathway. And if you get your students to take at least 7 steps, it activates the BDNF, which is a receptor in your calf that releases chemicals and endorphins that goes directly to your brain and activates and opens up the pathways in your brain.
Let you walk in my hall, like, when I go back and sit down, do some work.
Now, what's interesting is if you come over to our side of campus, because this is what we eat, sleep, drink, and breathe in the physical education area, and we do a lot of activities in our classes. I have my students doing stuff all the time, and all I'm really trying to do is to get them to take 7 steps. They have no clue the method to my madness until they get to a certain level and take the class where I teach this. And then they look back and they're like, Dr. Cummings, we just thought you were crazy. We just thought you were a kid that you like to play and have fun. Probably all of the above. But I'm motivated by higher intentions because I want to wake your brain up, I want to create homeostasis, and I want to prepare you for learning. So at least, depending on which class it is, and whether it's the 55-minute, the hour, 10-minute, or the 2-hour, 55-minute version of the class, is how many times I get them up and move them.
How different is it though from an 8 o'clock class to, let's say, like a 1:15 or?
My style will change depending on the personality of the class, but the bottom line on your research summary is the 20-minute rule. Yeah, I think that's on there.
Mm-hmm.
The 20-minute rule we know definitively through decades of research